How's it going, PD team? In this tutorial, we're going to be making orbs. Yes, you heard that right, orbs. This tutorial is inspired by an AI loading bubble that I saw that was part of UI. One of the things that will get you good at Cinema 4D is trying to recreate things you see. This idea is nothing new and commenced among fine artist painters called painting from the masters. It's been common practice for over a millennia, so don't be shy at trying to recreate things that you see and love. In this video, we're going to be doing some advanced tricks within the transmission channel in Redshift 3D that you may not be aware of. There's some interesting shader play that you'll get to see in this tutorial, and I hope it inspires you while giving you a new technique to add to your tool chest. I'm going to show you a few examples that you could design in the middle of the orb, but that's really not the point of this tutorial. It's really up to your artistry and brand in what you create. This tutorial is mostly about creating this interesting glass material and effects. My next video will be an entire tutorial on the transmission channel, the science behind it, the inner workings, and how it interacts with other channels. Please subscribe so you are the first person to know when it comes out. With that being said, let's dive in. I want to mention before we get started, there's a bug that's not sending a bug report when your system crashes with Cinema 4D. I'm on version 2025.1 and there's a bug that happens with the playhead, so it'll freeze. So while you're doing this project, make sure you save often. It's been a problem and it does not send a bug report, so I don't know if Maxon will be fixing it anytime soon. So if you do run into this issue, send a support ticket to let them know that the crash is occurring and that there's no bug report. Let's get started. Okay, so I want to run through the project file so you get similar results with your scene, your lighting, your camera, and all that good stuff. So the first thing first, with the camera, I just have the coordinates set to 0, 0, and then I pulled it back so it's dead straight on, facing in the Z direction, and it's a 50mm lens. Now with the lights, I've got two options. I've got a white background and a black background, or a darker color background, and then I've got an HDR, and these are just dome lights. So with the HDR one, it's just a simple studio setup, just default intensity set to 1, and then I've got a white fill and a black background as well, or it's like a dark blue. And then I have this top light, so if I go out of the camera, you can see we have this circular light, and what this is going to do is it's going to create a highlight on the top of the globe. So then next is the internals, and you can see this animation goes right up until the edge of the glass, and that's going to be really important. Whatever you design, you want the shapes to go right up to the edge of the glass for this effect to work out. So here's the internals. Let's go ahead and see how it's made. Okay, so here I'm in a blank project. Now, what I want you to keep in mind is you can create whatever you'd like. These are just mere suggestions for what you put for the internals of this orb. If you want to have your own idea, your own branding, whatever you want to throw in there, go for it. These are just mere suggestions. So I'm going to just create this kind of wavy circular shape. So to do that, I'll go ahead and do the circle, and my orb is 120 radius, so I'm going to set this to 112, and I want to go on the horizontal plane, so I'll hit the XZ. We're going to add a cloner. So with this selected, I'm going to hold down Alt, click the cloner, and we're going to set it to linear and bring down the position so they're stacked up on top of each other. And what we're going to do is we're going to scale them down incrementally in a step fashion. So what I'll do is I'm going to set this to 96, 96, and 96. So you can see each clone is 96% the size of the subsequent one. Now we'll just go ahead and click this until we get all the way to the center of the Tootsie Pop. There we go. And next what we'll do is we're going to group this up because we're going to deform it. Go ahead and hold down the null while holding Alt. It nests it for us. And this first deformer we're going to be adding is going to be the formula effector. So I'm going to hold Shift with the null selected and it will nest it. And I'm going to go ahead and call this warp. And this one is going to be the warping effect. So what we'll do is we're going to zero this out, set it to deform the points, and make sure your cloner doesn't have the effector in here. We're using this as a deformer, not as an effector. And then we'll go up 10 units like so. And then I'll go to the effector here and I'll set the speed to half so it's slower, but the frequency is faster. So we get this. Now if I hit play, you can see we get this effect. Pretty cool. Next, what I want to do is I want to go to the cloner, make sure it's selected. And now I'm going to add the formula effector. And this time what it's going to do is it's going to include it in the effectors list. So I'll add it to my group here and I'll leave these all default at 1 and 1, but then in the parameter we're going to change this to 0 and set this up to be 10 as well, and we'll get rid of the scale. So now if I play it, we get this waving effect like so. Now if I want this to perfectly loop, we'll need to set it because we set the initial one to half speed, see 0.5. This will need to be 180. In fact, it has to be 179 for it to be a loop. So I'll let this play through one time. And there you go, there's the loop. So there's our base shape. Now what we'll do is we're gonna take this null, call this lines, and we'll connect it because we want one shape. So hold down Alt, and now we need a profile. So I'll set it to 2 and 2, so it's rather small. And we'll add the rectangle to a sweep, drag our connect in, and there you go. Now, one thing you're gonna notice if we go to shading and lines is our segments are not good. So I'll go to the circle, and I'll just set this to something like 20 until it smooths out. And you want the least amount of polygons as possible so it doesn't slow your machine down. So there's the wave. That looks pretty cool. That's perfect for this orb type effect. feels like a loader of some sort, like it's thinking. Now you'll notice one thing that's happening here is we're getting some banking happening. See the twist in the polygons? So to fix that, we're going to turn off banking in the sweep object, and we can turn off all these other ones as well. So now it looks correct, and it still plays back pretty quick. We're not getting any frame degradation. Okay, let's go ahead and build out the shader for this in this scene here. So what I'll do is I want to group up this sweep, call it lines in a null to make it tidy. I'll call it internals, and we'll go ahead and go to our shader here, double click, add it onto our lines. And then with this shader, this is going to be just a suggestion of what I think works best with these kinds of internal loaders is we'll turn down reflections, turn off the base color. I'll go to my shader here. So here's our shader, and I like cleaning these up. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all these inputs so it's nice and tight. And then what we're going to do is we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom. We're going to load up the emission channel, set it to 1, and you're going to adjust this later. And the first thing we want to add to the emission is a layer, color layer, add it in. Okay, so we're not going to use the base color, so we'll leave that blank, leave it black. We don't need the masks. And we're going to need 3 layers. So we'll turn these on and I'll add this color in here. So I'll hold down Control and click the dot. So we have 3 channels. And so for the first one, what we're going to add is we're going to add a ramp. Give us some space because we're going to throw UV node called UV projection. So we'll add it in our base, layer 1. And the way this is going to work is we'll set this from vertical to horizontal, set this to object, and then we'll set our colors. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here, set this first one to something like pink, and the next right one I'll set to something blue that feels kind of techy, like so. And then we're going to turn on our Redshift IPR in the viewport. And here's our gradient going across. Now we want some depth and we want different corners shaded and whatnot. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we'll do is we'll add a Fresnel, and I'm going to pick a pink color and set this to green like that. And I think I picked a neon green actually. So let's do that. We'll adjust it in a sec. Then I'm going to take my projection here, duplicate it again. And this time I'm going to set this to black and this color to an orange, bring it halfway. So it's like somewhere around here, a little more than halfway. And then what we can do is we've got X, Y, and Z on the rotation. We're going to rotate this so that the front of it has a highlight of orange. Load the IPR up, go to our layer channel, turn the Fresnel on, screen. So you can see when we're down here, the top has a highlight of light green. So we get that contour. And then our third one here is this guy. And then we can rotate it to be the front corner like so, and just bring this up just a little bit more. So we just get this corner like so, set this to screen, set it to average. There we go. So now you can see the first layer is normal, second one's screen. So we get that highlight on the top, and then we're averaging these colors together with this orange. I'm gonna make this a little bit more red. There we go. So now we get this nice pink color. So there's the contour. Then we can take our Fresnel, uncheck this so we can use it controlling this versus the IOR, and we can set this to something like 2 so we get more of that highlight on the top. And there you go, there's the internals. So go ahead and copy this, Control C, and let's go ahead and go back to our project. Do me a huge favor for the growth of the community and tap that subscribe button. Only 35% of my viewers are subscribed. Take a moment now and smash it. I know you want to. Now back to the video. Okay, so here we are in our base project. I'm going to do Command or Control V, paste our project, and you can see it goes right up to the edge. And if we want this even closer, we can by just clicking, going to our circle, and nudging this value up till it gets right to the edge. And there we go. So let's go ahead and now work on the core of this project and the effect of this glass orb. So this orb here is set to X-rays so we can see through it and see the internals before we have a texture. Let me go ahead and rename this here. And to get this to be correct, there's a couple processes we need to do. So I'll double click to make a texture, call it orb, and we'll set this first color to white, bring the roughness down to 0, and then we're going to take our transmission and crank it up, and there's our base. And now we're going to take this and duplicate it. So I'm going to Control drag after, and I'll call this inside. So that's the inside of the orb. So I'll go ahead and add the inside first, so it's in the correct order, and then the orb. Internal first, orb second. So what we're going to do is we're going to set our first tag on the inside to back, and set the front-facing one to front. So our orb is set to front, this one's set to back. And so what happens is it's based off of the normals. So the normals are pointing outwards. So the outer shell is going to be this orb, and the inside that's facing the internal design work that we had, the MoGraph piece, is going to reflecting into it. And the reason we're doing this is because we need to treat these individually to get the right effect. So what am I talking about? Well, let me explain something. So when we look at this reflection, you can see we're seeing inside of these lines. See how it moves? And this is critical. But what we don't want is a buildup of the reflections. So what we'll be doing is I'm going to go to the inside here. If we go to the advanced tab, you can see in the reflection, we have direct scale and indirect scale. So I'm going to zero those out. And now you can see we can control how the internals reflect with each other. And this is really critical because when we start blurring the glass, you're going to get a buildup of bright white. And so what we'll do is I'm going to bring this up, and you can see when I bring up the indirect scale, which is the refracted light, we get just the color. Whereas if I turn this one up, we get just the white. And this is the culprit. If you're doing something on a dark background, this white, when it blurs, will turn this whole edge of the sphere to be bright white, and that is not desirable. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn down the direct scale and do the indirect scale, which is the refracted light. And this is going to blur and give us nice colorful blurs on the edge. So let's go ahead and see how that works. So I'm gonna go to the orb here, and we're gonna leave all this the same. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna just turn up the reflection roughness to something like this. And you can see we get nice colors happening here around the edges. I'm gonna go back to the inside here and bring this up. And you can see it turns white. And that's because it's blurring that reflection channel, which is problematic. So you can see that's a quick, easy fix to that problem. So one other thing that happens here with using the reflection, and you blurring it, you can see the areas that are closest on this wave shape that we created, the stuff that's closest to the front facing edge is actually nice and sharp. And as it goes back into space, it gets blurrier. It almost works like a depth of field effect, which is pretty cool. So I'm gonna set this to 0.2, and that feels nice. And now I can adjust the IOR. So right now, this is giving me some heavy magnification. So you can play around with this to get the right amount of light bending that you want. So you could pick something like this, and then you'll notice when you turn the IOR down, the roughness also is affected. So you'll have to turn that up if you want that blurry effect. I kind of like it set to like somewhere around 1.35. That seems to be a sweet spot of getting distortion, but it not warping too much around the edges. So I like something like 0.2 for here. Okay, so now that's out of the way, and you can see we get some blurring happening around here and color light around the edges, but I want some additional blurring around here. And the way we're gonna do that is with this extra roughness. So you can see here in the transmission transparency, we can turn this up to get some additional blurring happening, which is pretty cool. But I want it just on the edges on the Fresnel. So to do that, we're gonna bring up our palette here, our node editor, go to the orb here, and I'm gonna go ahead and move some stuff around so we get some more space. Okay, so that blurring effect, we're gonna double click, type in Fresnel, and we'll go to the, scroll down to where it says refraction, transmission, extra roughness. We're going to hold control and click. And I actually like deleting these so it gets less confusing. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all these and just enable them when I need them. So extra roughness, we're going to take this. And if we plug this in, this value black is 0. This value is white, which is 1. This will be set to 1, which is way too high for the roughness on the extra roughness channel in the transmission. So what we're gonna do, you probably guessed it, we're gonna use a change range. So plug this puppy into the input, plug this in here. We can turn off these inputs. And with the change range, I'm gonna just set it to 0.3, which I think looks the best. And if you want, you can also adjust the Fresnel, which I'm gonna do because I want the blur to come in pretty far. So I'm gonna click the Fresnel here, soloing it, turn on the IPR, and uncheck this checkbox, which breaks the link from accessing it from here. I like using these whole numbers. I'm gonna just set this to something like 2. Let's do 2.5. There you go. So it's much easier to work with. And now we can come in here, and you can see now we have more blurriness happening just on the edges. Let's set this to 1.5, and I'll show you what we get. So you can see now the blur is already coming in about here, which is what I like. And let's try turning this value up, this max value. So you could get really crazy with it and crank this up to like 1. And you can see it starts really, really blurring it and giving you a different look, 0.35. Okay, so let's now take a look at the reflection here. So what I want to do is I want to control this reflection a little bit better. So what I can do is I can come in here and turn this down and now go and add the coat, because the reflection has blurriness to it and stuff that we're not able to control separately. So we'll use the coat as a solution to this. So you don't need much. You can set it to like 0.2, something pretty low. And then we can just set the blurriness to like 0.05. So just a little bit of blurriness. Let's try 0.1. There we go. So it's not super, super sharp. It looks fake if you have it too sharp. So just a little bit of roughness is good. So the next thing I want to do is I want to show you how you can relight this and add more highlights on here. Like I want to pop the edges off a little bit more. We're going to be plugging into 2 different channels to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go here, scroll all the way down to the bottom, go to the emission channel, hold control, we'll add it in. And we're going to also go to the reflection channel and bring up the color, turn the reflection up. And right now we have 2 reflections happening because the coat, this will all disappear and only show up in places that we select. So let's go ahead and do that now. So here's the relighting effect. So double click, add a layer. We're going to add it to the emission, and we're also going to add it into the reflection. And so now because this is black, it got rid of that doubling up of the reflection. And we're going to double click, type in ramp, do a UV as well, set it to object, plug it into our first channel. I'll solo it. And for our colors, I'll go halfway here, a little bit more than halfway. And I'll pick a light blue, almost to green, something like that. And now here's what's cool. We can take this last value on the rotation and it works like a clock. So we can point this in the direction we want. So I'm going to go to here, and then this value will push it behind like so. We'll go to something like here. I'm going to take these, duplicate them for channel 2, scroll down. I'm going to solo this here. And this next one we need to enable. So I'll go to 2 and enable it, set it to screen so it doubles up. And then this one, we're going to pick an orange. So there's our orange. I'm going to zero this out, rotate it. So we go on this side, something like here, and then tuck it back. And if you want the highlights to be trimmed closer to the edge, you can always add a Fresnel. So I like having a Fresnel. So I'll come in here and just double click Fresnel, plug this in here to the mask, plug this one into the mask. And now you have a controller for getting that edge like so. So I may or may not use this, we'll see. And so now what's happening is, because this is plugged into our reflection color channel, areas that have highlights will be colored that green, and it's very subtle here. But you can see there's the orange, the brighter reflections. And then what we can do is we can add to it on the emission channel. We can start bringing this up, and you don't need much, no more than like 0.2. And there you go. So now you can see we get this nice highlight here on the edge and this orange highlight here. I'm going to delete it for the orange one. I'm also going to rotate it more so it's more on the side and maybe further forward. There we go. And there's the relighting effect. So I'll zoom out so you can see the whole network setup. We have a Fresnel and a change range to get the extra roughness, to get that extra blur. The base reflection has a 0.2% to get the depth of field effect. And we can always just bring this up a little bit more. Now I'm seeing it, I might want to bring it up so get more depth of field. And then the internal gradient, you can adjust to your heart's content. You could do circles, you could do particles, you can do all sorts of different things inside the center. So what you could essentially do is you could delete this internal here and then make this a preset. So anytime you need an orb, you got one already preset ready to go. You relight it, change the branding colors. And that's essentially it to create this orb effect for user interfaces. Instead of a loading bar, you could have this like AI chat bubble looking thing that kind of works as the network connects and builds the profile. Totally up to you what you do with it. That's it. I hope you found this tutorial useful. If there's anything that you guys see on the internet that you want me to try to recreate, post in the comments section below. That's it. Thanks so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on more content. Thanks for your support.